Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. It is a new week of new opportunities. Wish you the best on this Monday of perhaps even resolution, as I do think there's plenty of very interesting things to be looking at this week. I want to follow up on yesterday's short-term analysis as Bitcoin did hit the top side of the short-term target at about 11,500. Now backing off and preparing for not for CMEs, they already opened, but for US Open a little bit later today at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, which is in, I don't know, like another 10-11 hours. So with that in mind, let's put the focus over here in the Krown Chain application, which we found at app.krownchain.net. And what do we see? We see the open interest still kind of oscillating with that same reach between 2 billion and 50 million to 2.1.5 billion. Not 2.1. Yes. 2.1.5 billion. Yeah, that's right. Okay, there we go. Sorry, dyslexia in the early morning, not good for the soul. Anyways, Bitcoin dominance actually popping up a little bit as well, still hanging around the 59% region. And as we did look over the past weekend, and as I'll probably just make that like a weekly thing, because it doesn't change all that much anyways, still looking for, very long-term upside there. And I do believe that it is in progress, especially with the way that it did presumably close, seeing as it didn't really change all that much, and it was already in a good posture to begin with. Fear and greed index, what do we see? 55 being shown right there, literally the same thing as yesterday. And I imagine in the data tab over here, I really want to pay a special attention to the Bitcoin global funding rate. Yesterday, we saw something very obvious and very interesting. All of the major exchanges were actually showing negative interest rates. Now, they weren't, all that crazy, negative 0.03% at the most to negative 0.01%, which is definitely not anything too crazy. But when we see them all on the same side, especially when Bitcoin's kind of on the low side of the short-term range, what's most likely to happen? Well, that was kind of leading up into the short-term Bula-ish bias there to about 11,500-ish region, of which Bitcoin did meet. So let's go over here and check out what she's doing right now. Oh, and by the way, I should talk about this still, because there actually is still a couple exchanges that are negative right here. However, not anything too crazy, just Huobi and OKX. So both of the Chinese exchanges, which is kind of strange there. Anyways, looking at Bitcoin, looking at the actual price action charts right here, what do we see? Yes, Bitcoin popping up to the 11,500-ish region. Let's actually go to a very low-term time frame right here. And now coming back down to test around the 4-hour 10 simple and 21x benchmark average, also the 10 simple on the daily as well. And does it look like it actually has a little more downside here after we do sell off on the top side of the short-term range? Well, looking at momentum oscillators, I am a bit concerned with what we're seeing right now, actually, as we do see 4-hour RSI looking like it actually does want to break below the exponential on this. After hitting that hidden bullish divergence move right here, I do look for it to likely come back down a little bit lower. Still long-term with the perspective of this time frame, does look constructive here and actually would still give it a chance. But for the short term, does that align with a little bit of downside action? Perhaps yes, especially when historical volatility percentile is this low. And by the way, it's just starting to expand right here, right now. We got to a multitude of zero reads, I think over, Saturday, late Saturday for myself and early Sunday, now expanding from that posture. And I do believe that that's going to correlate with the resolution very likely of this range. This is very frothy right now. Now, with that in mind, that does not imply direction, obviously. And the direction will still be verified, at least in the way that I do things, with a break above 11,000. Let's see exactly where this is. Let's call it 11,500 and 20, I guess, is the exact number to the upside on a 4-hour closure. To the downside, it would be 11,300-ish still. That would be resolution of the range and derived targets. If the upside resolution is had, 11.8, to the downside 11,000 even. So a nice, $300 to $400 move, depending upon where you're kind of entering in from. But could that have greater implications on the whole? Well, absolutely yes. Especially if it breaks the upside. I do not think that things would stop just for except for just for a short-term move, a short-term pullback at about 11.8. I would be extending those targets very likely all the way up here towards about 12,000. The same areas that were relevant in August are going to be relevant on the way back up. If Bitcoin does choose the northern road here. And for the downside, if 11,000 does, which I would actually be initially looking for a bounce right around here, but if it were to fail, let's call it with a 4-hour total closure below 11,000 bucks, then I would extend those targets back down to about the mid 10,000s, actually about 10.5 region, and then come back and re-announce size it after that. Now you are seeing this trend line right here. It's obviously not relevant to this time frame. If we go down to a 4-hour, you can see kind of why I did have it in there, but it's not even that accurate for that time frame either. I wonder what time frame I was looking at it at. I imagine it's probably going to be meeting up with the current price action somewhere around that 618. So if you can just kind of extrapolate it out. Now, of course, this is if and only if Bitcoin even breaks to the downside to begin with. I would be looking for this trend line to come somewhere in visual view as well. And yeah, it is kind of at current price action, a little bit above 10.5 region. So again, one thing before the next, but I just want to show that this price action right here, this current base that Bitcoin's building to break out or break down out of, is likely to produce some pretty massive moves. $1,000 on the whole, and especially if it's to the upside, I do think that they could have really significantly more actually. So with that in mind, let's go through all the low-term timeframes. Actually, before we do that, forgot to even cover up the 4-hour as well, of which 4 hours still north, still headed north, but a little bit tired there, as you can see. And I'm curious to see what the 3 and 2 hour and 1 hour show, because we expect that, if it is going to come down here, which it looks like it is, then we'd probably see them already, showing those signals, of which we do on the 3 hour. So there you go right there. And also on top of that, we actually do have some hidden bearish divergence. Credit to Caretaker on this one. I actually would have missed that one myself, but how much lower does this one get us? Probably back down to the low side of the range, somewhere around 10,350-ish region, maybe even all the way down to 10,300. I'm sure a lot of people are over here on CMEs being like, but Krown, it's a gap. And there's a gap at 11,425. It's off the charts right now, and Bitcoin has to go back down. Well, probably does, yes. And does it fill at the bottom side of the range at about 11,350? Yes, but here's the thing. If a lot of people are going to be calling this a gap, is it truly a gap? I mean, when I look at a daily, do you see a gap right there? If you have to do one of these, it's not a fucking gap. So while I do look at it as technically a gap, I actually don't look at it as one to be played, meaning that if Bitcoin comes back down to this level, which it pretty much, let's actually go back on over here. Yeah, Bitcoin comes back down to this level, which is only about $50 lower than where we are right now, then I actually would not be looking for it to bounce, to be quite honest with you. I do think that Bitcoin would actually shoot through it and aim for the 11.3, the low 11.3 region, like 11.320-ish to 11.300 even, and probably play out a little bit of a short-term bounce right there. The question is then, just as it was yesterday, do we actually break to the downside? Which right now, as you can see to the upside, it was proper to have a bit of restraint there as well. At the end of the day, not getting continuation as it is right now. Let's go in the 3 hour and see what it's doing here. We've already looked at the Stokes, we've already looked at the RSI, and we see the same thing on historical volatility percentile. So that is good and suggestive that we actually will resolve this. I even think today is incredibly likely. I do believe last week I said either Friday of last week or Monday this week would be incredibly likely. Looking at the 2 hour right here, what do we see? Same thing coming in from a very, very low level. By hourly RSI breaking down a bit as well, constructive on the whole, but short term, yes, down. And what do we see on 2 hour Stokes right here too, coming down? And what do we see on the hourly if we were to extrapolate that a bit more? Yeah, hourly coming down here as well. We do have a trend line forming, although I don't really care too much about trend lines on hourlies, and hourly RSI is very much bearishly short-term imposed and looking for a move back down somewhere around the edge of the bearish control zone. So how far does price action get around there? Does it come down to 11,350, 11,300-ish region? Don't have a strong opinion on that, but yeah, I do think short-term downside probably, and we'll just say colloquially speaking, to like 11,320, because that seems about right. That also would be a backfill, I believe, on yesterday's open, or would it? No, well, around there is 11,350. What about on the 2-day? Yeah, the 2-day I think is 11,350 is 11,330-ish region. So I would be looking for a bounce there, to be fair. I'm not saying that we're going to break down just because Bitcoin gets back down around there. I do think short-term down to test the bottom side of the of the range at about, let's just call it 11,320, 11,330-ish region, and probably a bounce there short-term. Then game on. If it actually breaks, then the downside targets get emerged once again. Same areas of basically we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks now, and to the upside, still 11,510 or 11,520, whatever it ends up being. I think on a 4 hour it was more so 11,550, no, 11,530 if you want to be super exact. I mean, this does look constructive, to be fair though. And then I'd call a resolution if I'm using a 12 hour, probably whatever this last high was right here, about 11,510, of which we basically closed at like right at yesterday. So does that count? A little bit too close to call it. You really want to see something a little more significant going on right here. Anyways, while we are on the 12 hour and seeing as we already got through the lower term timeframes, anyways, what do we see here? We do see that 12 hour Stokes are going to be actually at that same trend line that we spoke about yesterday. Oh, I guess I already have it drawn in there. So remember, this trend line is relevant for the last few major lows coming out of this current base. So I actually do like it, and this would be a more Bula-ish view on this time frame. This catching the lows in 8th of September. September, 24th September, and 4th of October. So that was this low right here, that was this low right here, and that was this low right here before this nice little move to the upside. So all of these constructive, and then once again hitting it right here as Bitcoin does grind up the top side of the of the short-term range at basically 11,500ish region. So I do look at that as overall good. Looking at 12-hour RSI, what do we see here? Getting kicked out of the bullish control zone, but again, long term, I look at it like this, and I do look at this as, like I said, constructive. Does it have a little more short term down? Possibly yes. You can see a bit of a regression going in from here into all of these, all these higher lows, of which I'd probably be looking for something to come down into this region and then bounce it up. Alongside 12-hour soaks, and if that comes alongside a break of 11,005, we'll call it, then yeah, looking pretty damn good, and I'd be looking for this one to have continuation up to those. I mean, realistically, 11.8 is not going to be anything more relevant than short term. Very likely 12,100 actually, and I don't know if I said that properly earlier. I think I might have just said 12,000 even, but it's technically 12,100 region all the way down to about 12,050, and I would be looking for a short-term pullback there, is what I am saying. Okay, cool. What else do we have? Is there any other way to what's it called, to declare resolution on this one instead of waiting for closures? Yeah, if I am using Wicks, I would be using the high of the 15th of October or the low of the 16th of October. Any sort of a wick higher or lower than those price actions will also constitute a resolution for myself as well. Now, of course, whenever you're using it in that format, is it going to be as is it going to be as settled as Jesus Christ, man, what is going on over here? Is it going to be as settled as waiting for a closure? Well, no. But in this case right here, because this range is so well established, probably does end up working. And for myself, I'm actually, I'm actually interested in trading this range once again, just because it is so close to resolution, and I would be using that or a closure. Do I want to be taking the scalps off the top and the low of this? No, not anymore. Not for me right now, but I'll let others have the glory, assuming that you are trading in that fashion right now. Anyways, go check out, or actually let's go to the daily here too. See what the daily's doing. Daily's bouncing off the 10 symbol for right now. Here's the thing though, I would even go as far as to say that if Bitcoin does not get continuation to the upside in the next 2 days from today, I would be inherently bearish just based off that, literally just based off that. But that's also 2 days of trading. That's a lot of fucking time. So with that in mind, let's check out what we're looking at right here. Hey, cursor, don't freeze. There we go. All right, looking at daily RSI, what do we see? A little bit of a rejection on the bullish control zone, but I look at this as a consolidation around the bullish control zone, which is typically going to be a good thing. Oh, I should probably check if I'm recording. I am recording and the microphone's working. That's good. Again, long term, I like this. I like this a lot actually. But does that mean that we could, short term potentially come back down a little bit more? Possible, yes, but I think the daily is actually the most constructive here. Daily Stokes, what do we see? We do see a trend line technically. I mean, this one's like really fucking aggressive. Whenever you see a very aggressive trend line like this, it's probably not going to hold for very long. And I'm even surprised that it's held this long. But a little bit of counter trend pressure where we are right now is actually being shown, to be fair. So there you go. The daily is probably the most boolah-ish. And of course, looking at daily historical volatility percentile, what do we see here? Coming from very, 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 very low reads, multiple single-digit reads. For actually like a week or two on end, and now expanding from that, from that posture. It's kind of what we see back on over here in July before this major massive move from about 9,000 to 12,500. That's similar to what we see back on over here in this consolidation before this move from about 7,500 all the way to 10,500 right here. Very similar to what we see on top of this consolidation over here at about 4,000 before breaking out from about 4,000 to 14,000 a few months later, and very similar to what we see back on over here as well in November of 2018 before the $6,000 to $3,000 breakdown for Bitcoin. So again, I do want to I do want to say that not only is a short-term time frame suggesting that we're going to resolve this current range that we're looking at right now between 11.3 and 11.5, but the higher term time frame suggesting that this is going to be a big base to build likely a trending move off of. So with that in mind, I really am paying attention to Bitcoin this week as it's looking quite ready. It's very mature, and I'm curious if there's anything else here on the 2 day or 3 day to be paying attention to. 2 day Stokes are going to be getting way up there. It's not too problematic when that does happen, but we have found our last few highs within this region, right around the 89.5 region, as you can see, getting them in both May before the coronavirus dump, and then also more recently in August, actually on this high right here at about 12,500. But as you can see, they also do stay up there for quite some time as well. It's actually not a bad thing to be getting into this range. It's a bad thing to actually be getting out of that range. What it does is it essentially your trend sets the buys, and then your momentum oscillator essentially suggests like when to be buying the dip in the terms of an uptrend and when to be selling, when to be selling the tops in a downtrend. In fact, that's actually kind of a point that I think a lot of people miss on that one. Anyways, off that topic and on to the next one. Do we have anything new on the 3-day? We don't even have a new 3-day dildo, I don't believe, or did we? Oh yeah, we did. Oh, interesting. What do I make out of this? Not much. Not much. Don't really have much to give off of this one. 3-day RSI looks good, short term. So there is that, but 3-day RSI looking good means, the next 3 days can be a little bit floaty and still kind of maintain that. 3-day Stokes does have a trend line coming in right here, of course, but, and that actually would imply that we have some more upside within this region, to be fair. But keep an eye on this area right here. Probably the next 1 to maybe 3-4 ticks. Yeah, 3 to 4 ticks, I'd say. Probably does start to test around there, and that could mark your next local high. So the 3 days also a little more on the Bula-ish side as well, if I'm looking for more obvious things. And of course, trend is your friend, and trend is, well, the trend is nice. And of course, this would be a good time to reference the weekly here as well. And I mean, the weekly is hard to hate. I always like to be bearish just inherently because I think it's more fun. But in this case right here, do I think that this is, inherently, what's it called? What the fuck is warranted? Yes, that's the word that I'm looking for. Is it warranted to be bearish? I mean, well, again, in the most simple of simple ways, what do we see here for, on the weekly? Well, it's not anything too scientific. It's not anything too crazy, but anytime that Bitcoin's been above the yellow 21 exponential moving average and it has had a positive slope, generally bullish. Keeps you along all the way from 2012 to 2014 before this major massive move to the downside. And same thing for the bear markets, by the way. Keeps you along all the way from 2015 at $250 all the way to $20,000 in 2018. And then same thing in 2018 shows you the way to the downside as well. This major move from 4,014 right here. And then more recently, as you can see, getting back above it on that tick above about 8,000 and still maintaining that nice positive slope as Bitcoin just crawls its way upwards and onwards, setting in a base above 10,000. I mean, that's been par for the course. It's just general upside. And looking at the long term here, just regardless of it, Bitcoin is in the area of long-term fuckery, but it has done something that it hasn't done before, really, back on over here in August when it spent that, a few weeks above 11,500 on weekly closures. This is the same area that it's been getting reject from for the last 3 years, going back to January 2018. And anytime that you see price action like this, where price action has been, running away from an area incredibly fast after like spiking into it incredibly aggressive. I mean, this one right here, 6,000 to 12,000, boom, down. This one over here, 4,000 to 12, or to about 12,000, boom, massive down. Well, that's indicative of institutional order flow dynamics at play. And when big boys are getting their fills and moving price action like that, you can imagine that a change in behavior would suggest that they are no longer doing that. And if they're no longer doing that, then we're going to see a macro change in behavior. And in that case, as long as price action is kind of grinding up this area right here, it does look like it is going to give a legitimate chance. You can also see this very easily from the volume profile, which does suggest that we are right below the last of the last, literally the last of the last higher value nodes within this region. Now, respectively speaking, it's not that high of a value node when you look at it, from these guys over here at like 9,000, 6,000, especially 4,000. But relatively speaking, yes, it is. And anywhere above there, which by the way, guess is where? About 11,800 region. It's free game essentially, and I'd be looking for moves back up into the 13,000s, 14,000s, and beyond, really. And I don't really like to say those more aggressive things long term. And of course, this still requires a few things to be set in stone before then. But you can see that the path is still open, and Bitcoin's resiliency within this region is something that it has not done before. This is the longest Bitcoin's ever spent above the $10,000 level, so that is of interest just within itself. The question to me right now is really, does Bitcoin actually play out a nice move to the upside here and actually break through and make everyone happy and everyone's green again and everyone stops fighting on fucking crypto Twitter? Or does Bitcoin come back down and test around the weekly 21, which is where 10.5 basically? Don't have a strong opinion on that, really. If I had to call it right now, I don't know. The upside looks a little more likely, I suppose. But But I mean, that's why I have trade plans set up. I don't think that this is not resolution to me right now as it is. I'll put it that way. Anyways, let me pop these back in over here too. Okay, like these, yeah, like these. I like these with no indicator values on those, as it's just a lot easier to read. Anyways, let's go check out CME, see if there's anything obvious here that we haven't already gleaned off of the spot price action. Man, my throat is killing me right now. 4-hour stocks look way different, way different than what we see on Bitcoin spot. You can see that they are getting picked up right here, rejecting the bearish control zone, following this trend line as well, or regression of it. And well, while it does have a little bit of short-term downside, that would speak to a lot more of a short-term bullish resolution of this current formation right here. Just looking at this alone, this is, and I haven't drawn one of these in a long fucking time. This is your traditional bull flag as well. I mean, it's just a falling channel coming off a nice little uptrend. It looks good. I mean, usually these things do break out to the upside. I think the hit rate is about 62%, and it would have some sort of a measure move, something like this, which guess where is pointing towards? About 11.8. Crazy how those things work out sometimes now, isn't it? And that's not too scientific of a way of doing it. I can actually take a much more done up version of it as well, which is probably going to point towards 12.1, but it should naturally line up anyways. And I trust a lot more the horizontal levels coming in from the August areas anyways than a measure move like that to begin with. But yeah, it is in there, and it does look like it probably. I mean, if I'm just going off CMEs here, it does look like upside is favored. What do we see on the 3-hour? Same thing. 3-hour Stokes popping back up here. What do we see on 3-hour RSI? Same thing as well. What do we see on bi-hourly? Same thing. What do we see on hourly? They're all headed up right now. Short term, yes, a little bit of, maybe back down to about 11.3, 11.350-ish region. But I would be looking for a bounce there. And if those want to play out, then that would be a damn good area. Let's see, what does a 12-hour say as well? Not getting much from this. Daily, we already looked at it. Looks like whole sloppy droppy, and 2-day looking all sorts of weird as well. But the 2-day last low is a very obvious continuation point to the downside as well. So with that in mind, I do want to put the focus once again on the traditional markets, which futures are open and trading. Obviously, individual stocks are not, and right now they pretty much opened up, unchanged. Slightly up. And am I going to be wrong about looking for a down open today? Yep. Well, obviously. Well, I don't know. Am I obviously going to be wrong about this? Is there still short-term downside on this one? Of course, there's still short-term downside on this one, but am I wrong to think that we're going to come down to 11.6 first before making a real decision here? Yes, I could be wrong about that one. Yeah, I could be wrong about that one. I want to see how real markets open, I want to see how the real open looks like. Right now, we're just getting futures trading. This is not like the actual market open, obviously. I want to see like what NDX is trading like when it actually opens up. I want to see what a symbol SPY, not ES1, is trading like when it opens up, because I'm getting very mixed signals from this right now, especially comparing it with Bitcoin. I do think that is possible that we actually might see these things actually put in a low right here. It's very possible, actually. Looking at the 2-day here still though, yeah, probably does come back down, to be fair. So with that in mind, what do we see on our other higher term timeframes? Still okay. Okay, there's one thing that's fucking obvious here. If we take out last week's high, 12,250, looking for new all-time highs. No questions asked. But with the way the lower term timeframes are operating on futures, does it look like we're going to try to set in a local low here? Yeah, it does. And I'll say just straight up like that, it does. And I would not be taking off that view until we actually do take out not Friday's low. Well, Friday's low probably gets it, but Thursday's low would be a lot better. 11,350 or 11,350 Krown. NASDAQ, not Bitcoin, 11,750-ish region. And then, yeah, I'd be looking for another $150 move, or a little bit more than that, down to about just below 11.6, and probably a bounce there. But I imagine that if that is going to happen as my raspy lesbian voice comes into view, it probably doesn't happen until traditional markets actually open up. Okay, I need some water for real. Jesus. Man, there's something weird about this time of year that, like, I just don't get a good night's sleep. Like every night that I wake up, I always feel like I need a little bit more sleep, and I'm getting like 8 hours anyway. So something is just weird about late October and early November. So it'll probably just be even more ridiculous than normal. Is that even possible? Hopefully not. What about SPY futures? Do we see anything obvious here? This one actually looks a lot more like it's trying to put in a local low right now. Call me crazy. If it takes out Friday's high, I'm bullish, and I'm bullish for a move back up above 3,500 to about 35 actually, and probably beyond. In fact, I would go as far as saying that that SPY futures are the more obvious one right here. I'd even put an alert right here. Just at 35.09, the high of Friday. I'd put an alert down here at the low of Friday, and I'd be looking at that as likely continuation points actually. And going down in low term timeframes, is it going to try to set in a low here? Yeah, it is. It actually is. So this is not what I would have been looking for if the markets are going to really have a crash leading into this week. What we would expect is futures just really suggestive of downside, like immediately, not giving you any chance to to get out of your positions. That's just the fucking definition of of a breakaway top. Or sorry, a breakaway reversal. In this case right here, we're not getting that. That's not the price action that you'd be looking for. So fair enough. I think right now the most relevant thing that I could say is it would be wise to wait for traditional markets actual open at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. But as futures are saying, and as Bitcoin has been suggesting over the weekend, being bearish within this region maybe not the wisest decision immediately, at least immediately. If those levels are taken out to the downside, yeah, I can definitely get on that side. Bitcoin back down below 11,000, SPY back down below like 3,400, and NASDAQ back down below 11,000 for sure. But right now, I think it's a little bit too premature to be saying something like that, because this is not necessarily what you'd expect. With a downwards Friday closure like that. So is there anything else that we want to check out before we send this a bitch off? It's only 26 minutes long right now, and I think that's actually a good time frame for this. Actually, let's go to do a quick look at Dixie right here. What's Dixie trying to do? It's trying to sit in the base as well. Short term up, yeah. Short term looking for a rally back up to about 93 and 85 cents. Weekly looks still like a reversal in progress. Is it possible that we could see Dixie rally while everything else rallies? Possibly, yes. I mean, we have seen that happen in the past before. Going back on over here to 2014 this was definitely a bad example. But how about in 2019? 2019 from what was it, March all the way to, basically, I think it was September of 2019, Bitcoin was straight up, so was stock market as well, and that's what you see right here as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everything's gonna trade contra to it. You have to remember that Dixie is relevant to other currencies, which yes are going to get some play in that, and there's going to be natural arbitrage between them that does kind of pull them all in together. And obviously Dixie value rising in comparison to that relative to them is going to probably put a little bit of pressure on those other assets. But I do think that it's important to reflect upon the fact that that's not necessarily exactly what it means. And there have certainly been instances in the past, prolonged instances I might say, where that has been untrue, and we do see multiple of these things around at the same time. Again, because it's not necessarily it's relative to other currencies' values. So, and even then, that doesn't mean that if Dixie's going up, that like say just a random USD pair can't be going up as well, like Swiss franc dollar, right? It absolutely can, and it's just on the whole relative to the basket, typically coming down. So that is of relevance as well. Let's go check out Link, and then we'll probably wrap this bitch up once again. Alrighty, linky time. I'm probably gonna do whatever Bitcoin does. This chart is not obvious at all. Not obvious at all right now. I would not feel confident on this chart. I would not. This one's either going back up to 12.75 or back down to $8.50. And whatever Bitcoin, whatever direction Bitcoin decides on, this one's very likely to follow. What about Mr. Beaterall? Is anything more obvious here too? Very similar to Bitcoin, but not as strong. Certainly not as strong. Short term, probably back down towards around 369. And I would be looking for a bounce there. The question is what happens after that. Then again, though, these ones right now, are they going to try to set them low right here? I mean, I did say at the beginning of this video, probably back down to about 11,350 or 11,300-ish region first. I don't know. I really don't know. I think for myself right now, when things get this frothy, when things get this mature, I'm looking for the break. I'm not looking for the range anymore. And even taking out the current 12-hour high at about 11,540 44 in some odd sense would probably be good enough for continuation to the upside as well. So with all of that in mind, I think what's going to happen is when I come back later and I do my Forex video, I'll probably do like a minute long for Bitcoin, and I'll probably do a Twitch stream today as well. So we'll be looking at the real market open a little bit later, but I also do have, of course, a doctor's appointment. I'm actually getting an MRI, so hopefully that goes nice and smoothly. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, and by the time that I'm back, regular market will be open, and we'll be on Twitch, and we can watch this one together. But for right now, if I had to call it, I'd say a little bit of short-term down. Do those targets get met? Does that target get met at around 11,350 to 11,300 region? I don't have a strong opinion on that. My strong opinion is on the resolution of the range. And with that said, I like to wish you the best, and the happiest. I'm gonna be signing off now. Take care, and until next time.